I never believed that betrayal could wear a smile so perfect. For years, I thought I was the one in control, the man who built an empire from nothing, who turned empty land into skyscrapers and silent rooms into boardrooms filled with powerful voices. My name meant something in this city. When people spoke it, they lowered their tone. When they shook my hand, they did it with respect. And yet, in the end, the most dangerous enemy didn't come from the streets or the business world. He came to my house. He came with flowers. He came asking for my daughter's hand. My name is Richard Hale, and this is the story of how I almost lost everything I worked my entire life to build, not through lawsuits, not through hostile takeovers, but through a wedding. I still remember the day Evelyn was born. I was standing in a hospital hallway, wearing a suit that smelled like cold coffee and stress. My phone wouldn't stop ringing, investors, lawyers, partners, all wanting something from me. And then the nurse walked out, smiled, and said, "Mr. Hale, you have a daughter." In that moment, the world went quiet. All the money, all the deals, all the power, none of it mattered. I walked into that room and saw this tiny human being wrapped in a blanket, barely the size of my forearm, holding onto life like it was the most precious thing in the universe. I promised her something that day. I promised I would protect her from everything, from pain, from fear, from people who wanted to use her for their own gain. I didn't know back then how hard that promise would be to keep. Evelyn grew up in a world most people only see in movies. Private schools, summer homes, drivers waiting outside with doors already open. But I raised her with one rule: money doesn't make you better than anyone. It just gives you more responsibility. She was kind, too kind. She believed people were good, even when they gave her every reason not to. That's probably why Daniel found her. Daniel Carter walked into our lives like a perfectly written character. Tall, well-spoken, always dressed sharp but never flashy. He had that calm confidence, the kind that doesn't beg for attention but somehow always gets it. He met Evelyn at a charity event I hosted. She told me later that he volunteered at shelters and helped underprivileged kids learn computer skills. I remember smiling when she said that. A man with a heart, I thought. A man who doesn't care about money. That was my first mistake. When Evelyn brought him home for dinner, I watched him closely. He shook my hand firmly, looked me in the eye, called me sir. He complimented my wife's cooking, asked me thoughtful questions about my early business struggles, listened more than he spoke. That night when Evelyn went to her room, my wife leaned toward me and whispered, "He's a good one." I wanted to believe her. But something about Daniel felt rehearsed. Like every smile was measured, every word carefully chosen. Still, I said nothing, because my daughter was happy. And sometimes happiness makes you blind. Months passed. Daniel became a regular part of our lives. He came to family dinners, holidays, even business events. My partners liked him, my friends trusted him. And I noticed something else. He paid attention. Not just to people, but to details. He remembered which companies I invested in, which properties I owned, which bank handled my largest accounts. Once, casually over coffee, he said, "You've built an incredible legacy, Richard. Not many men leave something this big behind." I laughed it off, but inside something tightened. The proposal came on Evelyn's birthday. Fireworks, a rooftop restaurant, a ring that probably cost more than most people's houses. She called me crying with happiness, saying, "Dad," he asked me. I said yes. I told her how proud I was, how happy I felt for her. But that night, alone in my office, I stared at the city lights and felt something I couldn't explain. Fear. The wedding planning began immediately. Big venue, big guest list, bigger expectations. Daniel insisted on involving himself in everything. contracts, vendors, payments. At first, I thought he was just being responsible. Until my lawyer, Marcus, walked into my office one morning with a file in his hand and a strange look on his face. "Richard," he said, "have you authorized any changes to your estate documents?" I frowned. "No, why?" He opened the file. Inside were drafts of legal papers, trusts, asset transfers, clauses that shifted control of several major properties into a shared marital structure. My name was on them. My signature was almost perfect. Almost. That's when the ground beneath me started to crack. I asked Marcus to investigate quietly. No confrontations, no questions to Daniel, just information. What he found shocked me. Daniel Carter wasn't just a volunteer and a simple tech consultant, like he claimed. He had a history. 3 years ago, he dated a wealthy woman in another city. They were engaged. 2 weeks before their wedding, her father died unexpectedly. Daniel disappeared. So did a significant portion of the family's assets. No charges were filed, no proof. Just rumors. And silence. My hands shook as I read the report. I thought of Evelyn. Her smile, her trust, her heart. And I realized something terrifying. Daniel didn't fall in love with my daughter. He studied her. I wanted to confront him immediately. To grab him by the collar and demand the truth. But Marcus stopped me. "If you do that," he said, "he'll run, and you'll never know how deep this goes." So we played along. The wedding moved forward. And I watched Daniel more closely than I had ever watched anyone in my life. I noticed the late-night phone calls he took outside. The way he asked Evelyn subtle questions about my health. About what would happen to the company if something happened to me. She thought he was just being caring. I knew better. 2 nights before the wedding, Marcus called me at midnight. "Richard," he said, "we found something." My heart dropped. He sent me a document. A legal agreement. Daniel had prepared papers that would, once he married Evelyn, give him indirect control over my primary holding company through spousal asset laws and a pre-signed power of attorney. The signatures were forged. Mine. And Evelyn. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about marriage. This was a heist. The wedding day arrived like a storm wrapped in sunshine. White flowers, soft music, guests laughing, sipping champagne, unaware they were walking into a battlefield. Evelyn looked beautiful. Daniel looked confident. And I stood there, holding a secret that could destroy everything. My wife asked me, "Are you okay? You look pale." I nodded. But my heart was pounding so loud, I was sure the entire room could hear it. The officiant began. "Dearly beloved." I watched Daniel's face. Calm. Certain. Like a man who already knew he had won. When he reached the line, "If anyone here has any objection." I stepped forward. The room went silent. Every eye turned to me. Evelyn whispered, "Dad." My voice shook, but I didn't stop. "I do," I said. And that's where everything changed. The room didn't just go silent. It froze. You could hear the soft crackle of candles, the faint hum of the air conditioning. Someone in the back dropped a champagne glass, and it shattered against the marble floor like punctuation at the end of a sentence that would change all our lives. Evelyn turned to me, her eyes wide, confused, already filling with tears. "Dad, what are you doing?" Daniel's hand tightened around hers. Just for a second. But I saw it. The officiant cleared his throat. "Mr. Hale, do you have a reason for this objection?" My mouth felt dry. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might rip through my chest. I stepped forward. I could feel the weight of 100 powerful people in that room, business leaders, politicians, investors, all watching me like this was just another performance. But this wasn't business. This was my daughter's life. This wedding cannot continue, I said, because the man standing here isn't marrying my daughter for love. Gasps rippled through the room. Daniel finally spoke. His voice was calm, smooth, almost amused. Richard, I don't know what kind of joke you think this is, but this is not the time. I turned to him. You're right, I said. This isn't a joke. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folder. This is a crime. Evelyn stepped between us. Stop it, both of you, she said, her voice shaking. Dad, you're embarrassing us. Her words cut deeper than any knife. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest while I worked late nights in my office. I swallowed. I'm trying to save you, I said softly. Daniel laughed. Actually laughed. From what? He asked. From a man who loves you, from a future you chose. He turned to the crowd. Everyone, I think my future father-in-law is just having trouble letting go. A few nervous chuckles filled the room. I opened the folder. 3 years ago, I said, my voice growing stronger, you were engaged to a woman named Melissa Grant in San Diego. Daniel's smile faltered. Just slightly. She came from a wealthy family, I continued. 2 weeks before your wedding, her father died. The room shifted, people leaned in. You disappeared, and so did $7 million from the family trust. Daniel shook his head. That's ridiculous, you're making things up. I pulled out a photograph. It was him. Different haircut, same face. Standing next to Melissa. Engagement ring on her finger. Evelyn looked at the picture. Then at Daniel. Then back at me. Daniel, she whispered, what is this? He didn't answer. I kept going. You forged my signature on estate documents. You prepared legal agreements that would give you control of my company through my daughter. I held up the papers. These were found on your laptop. Daniel finally stepped forward. You had no right to go through my things, he snapped. No, I said, but I had every right to protect my family. Security moved closer. Guests were murmuring now, phones discreetly raised, recording what would soon become headlines. Evelyn's hands were shaking. Tell me this isn't true, she said to Daniel, please. Daniel looked at her. For the first time, the mask cracked. Just for a moment. Then he smiled again. Evelyn, your father is paranoid. He's trying to control your life. You know that. She turned to me. Dad, is this about you not wanting me to marry him? Because if it is. Stop, I said. My voice broke. I would give up every dollar I own if it meant you were truly happy. But I will not hand you to a man who sees you as a key to a vault. That's when Daniel lost his temper. His calm voice turned sharp. You think you're so powerful, Richard, he said. You think your money makes you untouchable. The room went dead quiet. He realized what he'd just revealed. Too late. Security grabbed his arms. He tried to pull away. Get your hands off me, he shouted. You don't know who I am. I stepped closer. Oh, I do, I said, and the police will too. Sirens echoed outside. Red and blue lights painted the white walls of the venue in flashing colors. Evelyn collapsed into a chair, sobbing. My wife rushed to her. I stood there, watching the man who almost destroyed my family get led away in handcuffs. As he passed me, he leaned in and whispered, "This isn't over." I met his eyes. "It is for you." The venue emptied slowly. Guests left in stunned silence, whispering, checking their phones, already spreading the story to the world. The wedding flowers wilted under the weight of what could have been. Evelyn didn't speak to me for 2 days. She locked herself in her room. I heard her crying at night, and every sound felt like punishment. On the third day, she came to my office. Her eyes were red, her voice was tired. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked. "Because I wanted to be sure," I said, "and because I was afraid you wouldn't believe me." She sat down. "I loved him," she said, "or at least I thought I did." I walked around my desk and sat beside her. "Sometimes," I said, "the most dangerous people are the ones who make us feel safe." She nodded. Then quietly, she leaned into my shoulder. For the first time since she was a child, the investigation moved fast. Daniel's past came apart like a poorly stitched suit. Multiple identities, fake references, financial trails leading to offshore accounts. The San Diego case reopened. This time there was evidence. He wasn't a mastermind. He was a pattern. One night, months later, I got a call from Marcus. "They're offering him a deal," he said, "if he confesses to everything." I stared out at the city lights. "Let him talk," I said. The confession came. Daniel admitted he targeted wealthy families, studied their habits, their children, their weaknesses. He called it social engineering. To him, love was just another system to hack. Evelyn read the statement. She didn't cry. She just closed the file and said, "I'm glad it was you, Dad, not someone else. Not too late." Life didn't go back to normal. It went forward. Different. Stronger. I changed my company policies, my security, my estate plans. But most importantly, I changed how I listened to my daughter. One evening, months later, we sat on the balcony, watching the sun disappear behind the skyline. She said, "Do you regret stopping the wedding?" I didn't hesitate. "I regret that you had to go through it, but I don't regret saving you." She smiled. A real smile. The kind that doesn't hide anything. Because sometimes, being a parent doesn't mean letting go. Sometimes, it means standing up in a room full of people and saying no, even when it breaks your heart. The courtroom smelled like old paper and quiet fear. Wooden benches polished by decades of restless hands. Tall windows that let sunlight fall in sharp lines across the floor like invisible bars. Daniel sat at the defense table in a gray suit that didn't quite fit him anymore. For the first time since I met him, he looked small. Not weak. Just exposed. Evelyn sat beside me in the front row. She didn't look at him. She stared straight ahead, her hands folded in her lap like she was holding herself together one breath at a time. The judge entered. Everyone stood. And just like that, the final act of the man who tried to steal my world began. The prosecutor walked slowly. Calm. Confident. "This case," she said, "is not about love gone wrong. It is about a system, a pattern, a man who turned relationships into weapons and families into targets." She clicked a remote. The screen behind her lit up. Photos, bank records, fake IDs, travel logs. Daniel in New York. Daniel in Miami. Daniel in San Diego. Always near wealth. Always near weddings. Always near money that vanished. Then she showed them something new. A name. Lucas Reed. Evelyn leaned forward. I felt my chest tighten. The prosecutor spoke again. Mr. Carter did not act alone. The room murmured. She turned toward the jury. Lucas Reed was a financial consultant, or at least that's what his clients believed. In reality, he was the one who moved the money, cleaned it, disappeared it. She paused. And he was inside Mr. Hale's company. I felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. My phone vibrated in my pocket. One message from Marcus. We missed him. He's been on your payroll for 4 years. 4 years. 4 years of meetings. 4 years of trust. 4 years of letting the enemy sit at my table. Daniel smiled. Just a little. Like he knew something we didn't. The prosecutor continued. Mr. Reed was arrested last night while attempting to leave the country. She clicked again. A mugshot appeared. Lucas Reed. My senior financial advisor. The man who helped plan my daughter's wedding budget. The man who hugged me the day Evelyn was born. Evelyn gasped. My wife covered her mouth. And I felt something I had never felt before in my life. Not anger. Not fear. Betrayal so deep it felt like it rewrote my past. Daniel finally spoke. His voice echoed in the courtroom. You see, he said, looking straight at me, it wasn't just me. Your world was broken long before I stepped into it. The judge slammed the gavel. Silence. But his words stayed. Lucas took the stand. He didn't look like a criminal. He looked tired. His voice shook as he spoke. I was drowning in debt, he said. Daniel found me. He didn't threaten me. He offered me a way out. He looked at me. I told myself I was just moving numbers, that no one was getting hurt. His eyes shifted to Evelyn. I was wrong. The prosecutor asked, Did you help Mr. Carter forge documents? Lucas nodded. Yes. Did you help him plan to transfer control of Mr. Hale's assets after the wedding? Yes. The word echoed. Yes. 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 Each one felt like another piece of my life falling apart. Daniel stood. His lawyer tried to stop him. He didn't care. You're all pretending like I'm some monster, he said. But look around. This world runs on manipulation, on power, on who controls what. He pointed at me. He built an empire by crushing competitors, by playing the system. I just played it better. I stood up. My voice wasn't loud, but the room heard it. The difference, I said, is that I never pretended my business was love. The judge ordered him to sit. Daniel laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. And for the first time I saw it. Not confidence. Not charm. Just a man who knew he had lost. The verdict came 3 days later. Guilty. On all counts. Fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, grand larceny. The sentence was long. Long enough that Daniel would grow old behind walls he couldn't talk his way out of. Lucas took a deal. He would serve time, but he would also testify in other cases. He left the courtroom in handcuffs without looking at me. I didn't look back either. The press went wild. Headlines. Interviews. People calling me a hero. A protector. A powerful man who outsmarted a con artist. They were wrong. I didn't outsmart him. I almost lost. One night, weeks later, Evelyn knocked on my door. She held a small box. Inside was her engagement ring. She placed it on my desk. I don't want to keep anything from that life, she said. I closed the box. Pushed it back to her. Keep it, I said. Not for him, for you, for what you survived. She nodded. And for the first time in months, she smiled. We took a trip. Just the two of us. No security. No schedules. No board meetings. We walked on a quiet beach where no one knew my name. Where I was just a father. And she was just a daughter. One night, sitting by a fire, she asked me something I'll never forget. Dad, do you think I'll ever trust someone like that again? I looked at the flames. Then at her. Yes, I said, but not because you forget, because you learn. Months passed. The company stabilized. The wounds didn't vanish, but they healed. Slowly, honestly. One morning, Evelyn came into my office. I got accepted, she said. Accepted where? I asked. She smiled. Law school. I blinked. You. She nodded. I want to protect people the way you protected me. My chest tightened. Not with fear, with pride. The city still calls my name with respect. The business world still watches my moves. But none of that matters the way it used to. Because the greatest deal I ever closed was standing up in a room full of people and choosing my daughter over my empire. Some people chase wealth. Some people chase power. But in the end, the only thing worth protecting is the people who would still love you if you lost it all. And every time I see Evelyn walk into a room now, stronger, wiser, unafraid, I know something for certain. He didn't steal my wealth. He reminded me what my real fortune was all along.